Uh, Good morning, my YouTube viewers. It's Crystal here. I'm here this morning because I wanted to do another code review for you. I'm doing Kaggle's bike rental community competition code review. And so basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over the code review. The competition has already finished, but hopefully you'll get some good tips whenever I go over the code review. And so this is the second code review I've done because the first one didn't work. The reason why is because I'm using my boyfriend's computer. He hasn't got Xbox screen recorder on his computer because it's a Chromebook. So I'm using an online code review, and when I use this online code review, the first time it didn't accept it. So I'm doing this the second time. I will say that whenever I submitted my work, although the public score doesn't look very good, I actually scored about 23, 24 on the leaderboard. So I didn't score that bad on the leaderboard, although the public score is, to me, it looks really high. So what we'll do is we'll read the problem statement. Bike sharing systems are a new generation of traditional bike rentals where whole process from membership, rental, and return back has become automatic. Through these systems, user is able to easily rent a bike from a particular position and return it back to another position. Currently, there are about over 500 bike sharing programs around the world, which is composed of over 500,000 bicycles. Today, there exists great interest in these systems due to their important role in traffic, environmental, and health issues. The data each day on number of bikes rented or other associated variables are recorded by a company in South Korea to understand the demand for such service. So what I did was I created the program using Kaggle's Jupyter notebook. It's a free Jupyter notebook for anybody to use. And so after I created the program, what I had to do was I had to import the libraries. The libraries that I'm importing for this program are NumPy to do numerical calculations and create NumPy arrays, Pandas to create data frames and manipulate them, Matplotlib, it's a graphics library to plot the points on a graph, and Seaborn, which is a higher level library to do statistical graphics. We're also going to import OS, which is operating system, and it goes into the operating system and it retrieves the files that you're going to need. And we're going to import sklearn, which is a machine learning library. So those are the libraries that we will be importing for this program. After we have imported the libraries, we're going to use OS to retrieve the data sets from the operating system. So it's going to be sample submission, train, and test. After we have loaded the data sets up, we want to read them, and we're going to read them using Pandas, using the read CSV function, and we're going to create the data frames train, test, and submission. So you can see train here. It has 599 rows by 13 columns, and the last column is total rentals. Then we look at test. Test is 131 rows by 12 columns, and it doesn't have a column called total rentals because we're going to have to predict on that. Then we have submission. There is actually a problem with submission because submission only has 74 rows by 2 columns, but when I tried to submit my work, Kaggle said it had to be 131 rows. So I'm not sure exactly what happened. I'm not sure if they made a mistake or if they did it on purpose just because they wanted to see if people would pick it up. But Kaggle would not accept only 74 rows in a data frame, you had to have 131 rows. Now what we're going to do is we're going to analyze total rentals using Seaborn's Displot. And you can see that this is your total rentals right here. You can see that there are not any outliers. And since there are not any outliers, I don't have to submit any code to remove outliers. Oh, made a mistake on that, didn't I? See, look, it's made a mistake, but I'll see if I can get it back. So there we go. Hopefully this will work. Let's just see if it's still working. Yeah, it's still working, I think. Now what we did was we made a box plot, and you can see that when we made the box plot, there are no outliers in the box plot. So that means I don't have to use any code to remove the outliers. I also wanted to make a box plot using the weather station and the total rental, and you can see that we've got three particular ratings, and we have a box plot for each rating, and you can see in rating number 2 there is one outlier, but it doesn't affect the outlier status, so I still don't have to remove any outliers. So now what we're going to do is we're going to define our target, and the target is the total rental column in train, and then we're going to combine the train and the test set. Combi equals train dot drop, total rental, axis equals 1, append text. And then we're also going to drop ID and DTE day because those are not needed, and then they won't work whenever you try to do the prediction anyway. Now what we're going to do is we're going to check for null values. There are no null values, so that means that we don't have to impute any null values. Now what we're going to do is we're going to create a heat map. So we created a heat map, and you can see from the heat map that most of the columns or features do not have a high correlation. And since that's very important, because if a column or feature has a high correlation, then you can remove one of the columns because it just is redundant information. And then we're going to print off the correlation here so you can see the correlation. And what I did was I went ahead and inserted code to remove columns that have a high correlation. But none of the columns had a high correlation, but I just left the code in there anyway. And now what we're going to do is we're going to normalize Combi. And so the code for when you normalize Combi, what you want to do is you want to make all of the values a level between 0 and 1, because it's easier for the model to predict with the values really close together like that. So now you've got your code for the normalized Combi, which is it's a Combi minus Combi min over Combi max minus Combi min. And what that will do is that will take all of your values, it will convert them to a level between 0 and 1. And now what we're going to do is we're going to define X and Y. So your Y is your target, and it is a dependent variable. It depends upon the independent variables, which is X. Your X are independent variables. So your X equals Combi all the way up to the length of train, and your X test is Combi from the length of train to the end of the data set. Now what we're going to do is we're going to use sklearn, train test split method, to split the data set up into training and validation sets. So you can see how that was done. We're going to have just 10% validation set. And now what we're going to do is we're going to define our model. I used Extra Trees Regressor because it's a very good regressor, and we got 100% accuracy when we trained and fitted the model. But when we predicted on the validation set, we only got 86% accuracy. So that means that there may have been a little bit of overfitting, but there's not a lot I can do about that. We check your RMSE, that's root mean squared error, is 693. And what I did was I made a data frame to compare the actual values against the predicted values. So you can compare the actual values to the predicted values. And then after I did that, what I did was I made a graph. So you can compare the actual values against the predicted values. So now what we're going to do is we're going to predict on the test set. And then after we have predicted on the test set, then what we did was we prepared our submission. So I had to make an extra data frame to prepare the submission. And the reason for that is because in the submission file only had 74 rows, whereas Kaggle wanted to see 131 rows. So ID was test ID and total rental was predictions. And then what I did was I took the data set, the data frame, and I converted it to a CSV file. And so you can see the CSV file. You can see it's 131 rows by 2 columns. And so when I submitted it to Kaggle, I had a score of 1,196, which doesn't look very good, but I did score pretty good on the leaderboard. I think I was 23 or 24 on the leaderboard. So that concludes this code review. If you like my video, please like, subscribe, and share. And I want to thank all of my subscribers for supporting my channel. It means a lot to me, gives me the enthusiasm to make more videos. And thank you so much for watching this video, and I look forward to making more videos for you in the future.